What's up, guys? Today, the second episode of Tug of Wars. I have Jason Aponte and Andrew Pasquini on my channel. Thanks for joining me, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Me first. I mean,
Yeah, sure. You can start this one off.
we've done some really big appearances with people. We've had 49ers players on our podcast, Guy Haberman, people like that on our. I have to say, and this is with no hyperbole, this is the most excited I've ever been to be on anyone else's stream, anyone else's channel, and just because the way that I see you carry yourself, and you remind me so much of myself at your age. And there was never this medium for me to get across my sports takes at that time. So I just want to say you are doing an amazing job, and we're here to help, but we're here and we're excited to be here and just talk football with you because you're so good at what you do.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I want to echo what Jason said too. I was like you at your age. I was doing the YouTube thing before, YouTube Live was a thing. So me and my friend would sit in front of our computer and do like weekly breakdowns of all the football games, all that fun stuff. And, it's pretty cool to be on. And I'm extra excited for the topic today, because Jason and I, we talk a lot about the 49ers. That's what we're known for. But, today's topic is very exciting for me because it's not 49ers for a day. So I love it. I love what you got going here.
I love talking regular football. Anytime that I jump on anyone, like when Croc asked me to jump on and talk about other receivers, I was through the roof because I was just like, look, we love the 49ers. But it's the same thing over and over pretty much, and we're trying to regurgitate some stuff, especially while we're trying to grasp the content. So excited to talk regular football with you.
Yeah, but there's also not that much Niners stuff going on right now. Like almost June, nothing much you could really talk about. So let's just get right into it. Should Eli Manning be in the Hall of Fame? You want to start this one off, Jason?
Sure. I mean, I live close enough to here where I'm biased because of, I guess I'm in the Giants country. People always talking about, Super Bowl wins. And here's the thing. Eli Manning probably is going to make the Hall of Fame. Do I think he deserves to make the Hall of Fame is a whole other discussion, because I would make the argument that of the draft class that he was in, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, and him, that he's the third best quarterback out of all of them. So if I think that Eli Manning, with 2 Super Bowl wins against a perfect Patriots team, the second time beating the Patriots as well, still makes the Hall of Fame, then that means I believe Phillip Rivers is going to make the Hall of Fame, right? So when you look at the quarterbacks that are in the Hall of Fame and you start to stack up their numbers, like Joe Namath is a Hall of Famer. I mean, Joe Namath wasn't that good of a quarterback. I don't know who needs to hear this, but because he called his shot in the Super Bowl and won it, that really put him in the Super Bowl. I mean, that put him in the Hall of Fame. So Eli Manning beats a undefeated team, and he wins another Super Bowl against, again, New York, Boston. All that stuff matters. All that stuff is contextualized. I think Eli Manning makes it, and I think that he should make it. And I know that people don't want to hear that because, so many turnovers, interceptions, 2 Super Bowls. There's guys with a lot less on their resume than Eli Manning that have made the Hall of Fame. And I think that's really what makes this discussion interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to say Eli Manning is in for me. I am the biggest, I don't believe in quarterback wins and losses because football is way deeper than that. Something about the balance of 117 and 117, though, like him ending perfectly on 500 is cool. But I'm a big believer. It's also in like, the Hall of Fame in every sport is a museum. I think you should celebrate the greats, the players who have done something that have never been done before. And for Eli Manning because we talk about how the 72 Dolphins are the only undefeated team in NFL history and all these only Eli Manning is the only quarterback to win a Super Bowl against an undefeated team. Right. And I think that's something that should be said. I think when you're looking at like Tom Brady, we all know how good Tom Brady is. For Eli Manning to be the only one who consistently had I mean, Peyton Manning was never consistently good against Tom Brady's Patriots, and he got a lot more chances at it. Eli Manning got 2 shots at Tom Brady in the playoffs.
And you got to win both of them.
And he won both of them. And 2 for his iconic moments. I mean, the throw to David Tyree, obviously, like everybody talks about David Tyree. the catch, but Eli Manning being able to escape out of the situation he was in. I think Seymour was pulling him down. And then the throw to Mario Manningham, that one gets lost too. That throw's insane. So for Hall of Fame, if you make a mark and you play in the NFL for as long as Eli Manning did, 15-year careers don't happen much anymore. And you have kind of those big moments that you see, and he was a consistently above average to great quarterback. He had some really good years kind of in the middle. Yeah, put him in. Why not? He's the face of one of the biggest wins in football history when he takes down, when the Giants take down the 18-0 Patriots.
One more thing real quick before I pass it to you. Don't discount the fact that he played for the New York Giants. In the same way that people talk about Derek Jeter's legacy is lifted because he played in New York, it's the same sort of thing that you need to discuss. Now, you throw in the 2 Super Bowls and it starts to get harder to discuss. But yes, the New York media and the East Coast bias towards that, I think it puts him right in the Hall of Fame. But go ahead, you got it, bro.
Yeah, but I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's being the GOAT in the Super Bowl not once but twice. He's been a really good quarterback. He's not been MVP, but he's been a pretty good quarterback throughout his career. So he meets all the requirements to be in the Hall of Fame. He has a Super Bowl. He's played pretty good in his career. He's made a bunch of Pro Bowls. He meets all the requirements to be in the Super Hall of Fame. He's not better than Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers, but he's meet all the requirements to be in the Hall of Fame. He has not 1 but 2 Super Bowl rings. He has Pro Bowls. And he's been a pretty good quarterback for his team. He's a starting quarterback for his team. He used to be a starting quarterback for his team. He met all the requirements to be in the Hall of Fame. So I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Real quick, because I saw Andrew kind of disagreeing. So Andrew, is Phillip Rivers not better than Eli Manning? Or
So I've always been very low on Phillip Rivers. Something about him, it's probably the Chargers. The Chargers have never been relevant in my life. Phillip Rivers changed that a little bit, but once again, I hate going to the quarterback wins because Eli Manning had better teams than Phillip Rivers ever had in LA, San Diego, whatever you want, San Diego, we'll call it for this case. Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls. Phillip Rivers never was there. And I know he had a few, what was the one in Denver where the Chargers were supposed to make the playoffs and there was I know he had a few things happen like that, but.
Well, all right. Counterpoint. Phillip Rivers on a torn ACL nearly beat the New England Patriots in Foxborough. LaDainian Tomlinson hurt his knee and left on the first play of the game. This man tore his ACL the week before and played on that. So, all right. So I don't know if I don't want to turn this into, Andrew and I arguing, but my goodness, man, you can't just leave that portion out of it. With Phillip Rivers is incredible.
That's why it's called.
No. It's your show. It's your show.
Amin got us on just for us to yell at each other because we don't do it on our own show.
Because we don't do it on our own show. We just agree with each other all the time.
Yeah, no. I think I understand the torn ACL. I've just always been very low on Phillip Rivers, and to me, Eli Manning and just his iconic moments, and if we're talking about Hall of Fame cases too, I think the amount of iconic moments Eli Manning has had compared to Phillip Rivers, I think that kind of pushes him over the top to me. But I absolutely understand the skill set. Phillip Rivers I think offers a little bit more.
Yeah, when you win 2 bowls, you're in. You're pretty much in at this point. It doesn't matter. Terry Bradshaw won 4. Terry Bradshaw is nowhere near top 15, top 20 quarterbacks. Yeah, all right. So you said it, Andrew. I didn't say it, but he's fine. Go ahead, Andrew.
So 2 Super Bowls is your bare minimum?
Yeah. Well, no, okay. 2 Super Bowls means you're in. That's not the bare minimum. There's guys who have never. Okay. I just said Phillip Rivers is in, and he's never even sniffed a Super Bowl. But when Jason
Aponte, Jimmy Garoppolo, Hall of Famer. Thank you.
Why he didn't? 2 Super Bowl rings.
2 Super Bowl rings.
So hold up. Let me wait. I know. I'm joking. Let me pivot off that. Josh Rosen.
I'm joking. Josh Rosen too.
Mm-hmm. Josh Rosen has 1. I'm sorry.
So he's halfway there. Go ahead, Amin.
No, the thing is, one thing that you didn't include in there is that you could have Super Bowl rings, but then you also have to be a starter and play as your team starter, right? Because you can argue that then Nick Foles or anybody could be in the Super Bowl. You could argue that. Like you said, you could argue Jimmy Garoppolo's in the Super Bowl, but they have to be a starter for the team and they have to play at a high level for their team.
Talk to him, I mean, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. That doesn't mean that they get in. That doesn't mean that they get in. They don't get in over Phillip Rivers. So
I was joking with my Jimmy thing. I was absolutely joking with my Jimmy thing.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to the next one, Julian Edelman.
Andrew, you start, man.
Nah.
Me neither.
He like I see the argument, and we literally just spent the whole time talking about, well, Eli Manning has Super Bowl titles, so he should be in. It's a little different at receiver. Like for me, but then again, God, this is so hard. Why did we pick this one to back up Eli? Because I feel like I'm just going to contradict everything I said with Eli.
Sort of, but not when it's a quarterback and it's a wide receiver who's playing with the best quarterback of all time.
I don't see him as one of those guys. Like, he's an all-time great. Absolutely. Does he deserve the consideration he's getting? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I see the argument. He was a very good receiver for a very long time. It's just his peak years. I mean, his season high in receiving yards was last year, or 2019, with 1,117. Like, I don't know. If you asked me to rank my top 10 receivers for every year Julian Edelman was in the league, like, he wouldn't be in the top 10. I don't know. I feel like here, like, being a receiver, never really the top tier receiver. I know Eli Manning has all the Super Bowl titles. So does Edelman. I just don't think playoff success alone is going to be pushing him into the Hall of Fame. So that's my take on Edelman.
Andrew, real quick before I pass it to Amin, if you put Julian Edelman into the Hall of Fame, Chad Ochocinco joins, Lavernius Coles joins, so many other receivers. Hines Ward joins. It's look, playoff performances are big, but they're not the same when it's a wide receiver and a quarterback. It's not the same thing. So for me, Julian Edelman is an absolute no. And if you're going to put him in, then you're going to put Steve Smith in, then you're going to put Chad Ochocinco in, you're going to put plenty of receivers. You're going to put Eric Moulds. You're going to start putting in, like, those are the type of people that you're going to start to let in. There you go, Steve Smith Jr. If you start to let Edelman in, you're going to let Eric Moulds in, you're going to let plenty of other guys who have been successful and have done more with numbers than Julian Edelman in this league. Yep. So, I mean, you talk to us real quick.
Julian Edelman has only had like 6,000 receiving yards in his career, 30-something touchdowns. That's not like Michael Thomas has more than that and like almost had like 5,000 yards in 3 years. And his entire career from like 2009 to like 2020, the man has only put up like 6,000 yards. That's not Hall of Fame worthy. That's definitely not Hall of Fame worthy. And like you said, then you got to put Steve Smith Sr. and you got to put guys like Chad Ochocinco, who are legends, who have way more receiving yards than Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman to only have 6,000 receiving yards. I get the playoff success, but also his quarterback was Tom freaking Brady, the GOAT. His quarterback was Tom freaking Brady, and he put up 6,000 yards in regular season and 30 touchdowns. Michael Thomas has almost 5,700 in 3 seasons that he played full season. 3 seasons, he's had almost all of that. And maybe next year he's gonna be Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. To have the best quarterback in the league and to only put up 6,000 receiving yards in your career from 2009 to 2020, no, he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely not.
I mean, you nailed it there, honestly. Yeah. To understand that Michael Thomas has done what he's done in the short amount of time that he's been in the league and already have surpassed Julian Edelman, man, I mean, you nailed that one.
Yeah, and like if Terrell Owens isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer,
unbelievable.
Like, Julian Edelman's not even in the conversation.
Don't get me mad. Oh,
sorry, my bad.
Honestly, don't get me upset about that because it took Terrell Owens how long it took. Honestly, you could look at guys in the league right now that are playing. Tyler Lockett is in over Julian Edelman. If you start to like talk about stuff like that, when you start to talk about numbers,
I know Baldwin's not in the league anymore, but Baldwin.
Yeah, Doug Baldwin. Like there's plenty of guys in this league who have played well at this level that won't ever sniff the Hall of Fame. The idea that Julian Edelman, because he was in the position that he was in, because he was on the Patriots, deserves to be in is almost laughable at this point. There's no reason for Julian Edelman to even be in. I understand that you want to point this up. I'm not trying to make this anything about you or anything like that, but I just feel like it's a bad discussion when people try to tell me that Julian Edelman's a Hall of Famer. I'll never see that case ever.
I think it stemmed from last year when somebody posted like, "Oh, Julian Edelman has a better Hall of Fame case than Calvin Johnson." And I think that's where we got the first idea.
Okay,
that's like,
hello?
There was a tweet from a few years ago. I forget who. I'm not going to slander. I'm not going to name names. But yeah, somebody was like, "Well, his Super Bowl success puts him in over Cal," and I think that's where it really started. Was that conversation?
No, look, he has one of the best Super Bowl catches in the history of the world, and we understand that. At the same time, there are guys who have 1+ playoff games in the NFL, in the NBA. Robert Horry, let's turn it to the NBA. Robert Horry has, what, 6 rings?
Lot.
Seven rings? Is he better than LeBron James?
Yes.
Is he better than, like, no. Rings don't. Yeah. Look, how my brother used to say it, and he used to say it in a jerk way, rings are for Liberace. The guys who really are actually really good at football or sports are the ones who can, like, lead up onto it. Again, you can only do so much at your position, right? Chad Johnson literally turned the Bengals from a joke to a team that actually got a bunch of Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football games, and they actually had success with Carson Palmer. That's the part that is lost on people. If you've played any sort of sport, you could be the best player on your team, do everything right, and your team could be terrible. Is that a reflection on you? No. And the same goes on the other way. If your team is really good and you perform in those positions because you've been put in them, does that make you the best? No. So Julian Edelman, no way. No chance that he gets into the Hall of Fame for me.
For the people that said, whoever said that Julian Edelman is better than Calvin Johnson, no
That's
way.
That's ridiculous.
It wasn't.
So basically, you're saying that since he has all the rings and the playoff success, that Julian Edelman is better than Larry Fitzgerald. Julian Edelman is better than Julio Jones. No way.
Anquan Bolden has 1 ring, and Julian Edelman has all these other rings. So there's no way on any day that you would take Julian Edelman over Anquan Bolden. No chance. None.
No. Moving on to the next topic is, does Russell Wilson deserve to be Hall of Famer?
Ooh, man. I just talked about Joe Namath. Yes. It's a yes for me, too. I just talked about Joe Namath. Joe Namath doesn't deserve to be a Hall of Famer. Yes, I said it. Let me look right into the camera. Yes, I said it. Joe Namath does not deserve to be a Hall of Famer. He just doesn't. Russell Wilson, what he's doing right now, and if you want to adjust for, okay, passing's different from whatever time to whatever time. Yes, Russell Wilson's a Hall of Famer. What are we talking about right now? If we were talking about a top 5 list of quarterbacks, is Russell Wilson not in your top 5 quarterback list, if not your top 3 at this point? How is he not? He's won a Super Bowl, so he's already checked that box for you. So you don't have to go ahead and say, oh, he's never won a big game. Whatever. You want to say he threw the interception? Cool. He was in that game. Russell Wilson's absolutely a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry, 49er fans. I know you don't want to hear things like this, but I believe he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah,
and the one stat that, like, people try and knock him for is, oh, he's never gotten an MVP vote.
Who cares?
And it's just like, man, like, we need to stop judging these players based off of what the media thinks. Because that's pretty much what MVP is. It's who the media thinks is the best player every year. So, like, Russell Wilson, he doesn't get that. It's sure he doesn't, but like what he's done to the franchise of the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, he's God, I don't want to like make too wild of a comparison here, but like he's kind of like Tim Duncan almost, like not in that range of age, obviously, but like there was just such a long time with the Spurs where it's just like, yeah, they are like almost Tom Brady, right? It's okay. This is the year that the Patriots take that downturn because Tom Brady isn't great, and blah blah. And then Tom Brady's just always kind of consistently good and good enough to make the Seahawks from a team standpoint haven't been phenomenal. If you take Russell Wilson off any of their teams the past couple of years, they're probably we're talking about them in the top 5 of the draft every year. Like Russell Wilson keeps them afloat. I think a lot of their early season success came from the whole let Russ cook thing. And then they kind of, he wasn't great in the second half, if we're being honest. But I mean, and with Wilson too, he probably has another 7 years left in him, barring any wild injuries, which we always hope, we don't want injuries. But and what he's projecting, he's going to be a Hall of Famer by the time he's done.
Yep.
I mean, you got it.
Russell Wilson's easily a Hall of Famer. He has a ring, but like you said, Andrew, that like look at Russell Wilson on the Seahawks. Without Russell Wilson, they lost Richard Sherman, they lost Earl Thomas, they lost Cam Chancellor. That team should have been in rebuilding mode. That team should have been not making the playoffs. They should have been in the bottom of the division every single year. Russell Wilson gets them to the playoffs every single year. And Russell Wilson has a garbage O-line. And before DK Metcalf, he had Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin. And he still made the playoffs every single year. And that defense is horrible. You take out Bobby Reiner and Jamal Adams from that defense has nobody on that team. That defense is garbage. And Russell Wilson still manages to win 10-plus games and take his team to the playoffs every single year. Without Russell Wilson, that team would get a top 5 draft pick every single year in the NFL draft. Every single year. Russell Wilson, and also every single season, Russell Wilson in the first half of the season plays like an MVP caliber player. Those 5+ touchdowns per game, or 5+ touchdowns per game. Then the second half he slows down a little bit. But every single first half of the season for like the past 3 years, everybody's like Russ is gonna be MVP. Russ is gonna be MVP. And the second half of the season he doesn't do as well. But every single year for the past 3 years, to play at an MVP caliber level for the first half of the season is pretty good. And to carry the Seahawks, which is a horrible team that should have been in rebuilding mode, to the playoffs every single year and win 10+ games, he should definitely be in the Hall of Fame.
But hey, they have a really good pass rusher on their defense.
No,
he's just a safety.
He managed to and remember, think about what they gave up for Jamal Adams. But honestly, Amin nailed it. And when you talk about this, and you talk about the play calling from that standpoint too. Imagine if you paired Russell Wilson up with a play caller who actually dialed things up the correct way, as opposed to when Schottenheimer was there and it was run on first, run on second, then let Russ cook on third down. They tried to change that last year, and they tried to let Russ cook on first. So their first down pass percentage was the lowest in the league before last year. And then when they get in there, all of a sudden that first Falcons game, all of a sudden they're throwing on first down and everybody's caught off guard. Okay, when people adjust to those sort of things is when you start to see the tapering off of that team as well. But Russell Wilson's absolutely a Hall of Famer, man. I mean, nailed it.
Yeah.
You know, this team would be nowhere without him. Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. They would be irrelevant, completely irrelevant. And still, for 49ers fans, they still are, you know, the Dwayne Wade Gatorade commercial of us waking up in the middle of the night. It's Russell Wilson we see. Yeah. It's always what we see. It's always Russell Wilson, because at the end of the game, when you play the Seahawks, you know that Russell Wilson is going to have the ball in his hands with a chance to really demolish his season, and you don't really want that to happen. So absolutely right, I mean.
So moving on to the next one, Tiki Barber. You live in New York.
I do.
I'm pretty sure, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
So you should probably know this one pretty well.
I do. Tiki Barber, honestly, is one of the most underappreciated Giants players of all time. And the reason that he gets a bad rap is because he fumbled the ball a ton. Mm-hmm. But that man is the best running back in Giants history. Hands down. Hands down. I don't want to hear about Ron Dane. I don't want to hear about Saquon Barkley at this point, because Saquon can't really get on the field at this point. Tiki Barber, during his time, before, look, you're thinking, Andrew. Keep thinking, because Rodney Hampton.
I'm thinking of something a little different than what you said. So
okay, no, Tiki Barber. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but I know for a fact that he's the best running back the Giants have ever had. Now, when you start to look at running backs, and I know there's another running back on this list that's going to elicit some wild responses from us, or passionate responses, I should say. Tiki Barber deserves consideration when you start to look at who's made the Hall of Fame. Again, the Hall of Fame is based around who's in there. When you start to compare resumes is when you start to be upset about guys not making it over certain guys, because, again, I hate to keep bringing this up, Joe Namath's in. Why is Joe Namath in the Hall of Fame? I hate to keep bringing this up and keep piling on the Jets. No, I'm not angry. It's just a point of Joe Namath is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's in because he called the shot in the Super Bowl, and he's in. And Tiki Barber, if you want to post his numbers against certain Hall of Fame running backs, you might be surprised. And I think that Tiki Barber has a much better case than people realize. That's the best I'll say. I can't say for sure because I haven't exactly dove into those numbers, but I know that Tiki Barber was a highly effective back that did everything for this team.
Tiki Barber has like 10,000 rushing yards, 68 touchdowns in his career. Like one time All Pro, 3-time Pro Bowl.
He's in. I'm sure that I can guarantee you that if we looked at running backs in the Hall of Fame, you would find him with better numbers than many of those guys. Now, if you want to contextualize that with era, how long they played, that's up to you. But for me, Tiki Barber deserves at least consideration. And, you know, now that you brought that up and you brought up how many touchdowns and yards, yeah, he's in. Come on.
The thing I was thinking about, Jason, is he the best not Thurman Thomas, O.J. Simpson running back in New York State history? Because I don't think the Jets have anybody better. I don't know.
The Jets? Oh, yeah, they have.
Am I forgetting something on the Jets?
You are. He didn't play for the Jets his entire career.
Well, LaDainian Tomlinson doesn't count.
Nope, that doesn't count.
Marshall Faulk.
Nope. Curtis Martin.
Who would I rather have? Curtis Martin. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'd probably say you're right. Curtis Martin over Tiki, because Curtis Martin. I feel like Curtis Martin never got the respect he got.
Curtis Martin's never going to get his flowers ever for as good as he was.
Hall of Famer though.
I implore people to go back and watch Curtis Martin in New England and on the Jets, so you can understand that. But go ahead.
Wait. Edgerrin James is a Hall of Famer?
That's different. Yes.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay.
Well, why not?
I don't know. That hurts my head. The Patrick Willis is. Anyways, we're talking about Tiki Barber though. Oh man, I'm very fringe. I'm very fringe on this. I'm gonna say no. For no particular reason other than I'm gonna say no to a couple other names on this list that we ran through, and I don't want to sound horrible, but Tiki only played 10 seasons, which I know is a long time for running backs.
Ooh, oh no.
I'm bouncing back and forth now. I'm saying yes and no.
Can I give you some stats real quick?
Give me some stats. Help me change my mind.
Barber is only one of 7 players to amass 2,000 or more yards from scrimmage in 3 or more seasons. Hall of Famers Eric Dickerson, Walter Payton, Marshall Faulk each did it 4 times, while Barber, LT, Priest Holmes, and Edgerrin James all did it 3. Barber and Holmes are the only 2 not on the list that are in the Hall. Okay? Now, Tiki's 15,352 yards from scrimmage ranks 15th of all time in the NFL, which is more than James, Dickerson, Jim Brown, Jerome Bettis, Franco Harris, John Riggins, and O.J. Simpson. What are we talking about now at this point, guys? And look, Barber is the all-time Giants leader in rushing yards. And the Giants have been around since 1908. Before football was even played.
Jason is very fired up, and I like it.
I am fired up because I'm over here on this side.
Sure, I'll say sure. I'll say yes. As I said, I think the NFL or every Hall of Fame should be a celebration of the great all-time greats. And when you talk about a running back who was as good as he was, for as long as he was, only 10 years, not a super long time, but Jason brings up all those stats. He was the face of a franchise up until Eli Manning came in. So yeah, I'll throw him in. I'll say yes. I think we should celebrate him and put him in the Hall of Fame, especially with running backs. There's a lot of guys on this list below him, in terms of rushing yards that are also in. So I will put Tiki Barber in.
One more thing before I pass it to Amin. Last stat. Tiki Barber averaged 1,680 rushing yards and 2,204 all-purpose yards over his final 3 seasons. In 2006, his final NFL season, Tiki Barber rushed for 1,662 yards while reaching 2,000 all-purpose yards for a 3rd straight season.
Yeah,
I don't even know how this is a discussion anymore.
He very much went out on top.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amin.
Yeah, Tiki Barber deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. 10,449 yards, 68 touchdowns. And he only played from 1997 to 2006. That's not a long career. That's only like 10 years by 10 years. That's only 10 years. If he played longer, he could have had way more rushing yards, but he didn't play that long. But don't put up 10,000 yards and 68 touchdowns in 10 years is really, really impressive. And like you pointed out, Jason, that to have 2,000 all-purpose yards in his last 3 seasons is really, really good. So Tiki Barber deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. The fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame blows my mind. He definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And we'll get to somebody else who's going to elicit a similar response from me when we get to it. But
I think I
go for it. Okay, yeah, you know exactly.
Moving on to Donovan McNabb. Before we move on to the thing, I think you wanted to see. I think you wanted to do this one after, but let's move on to Donovan McNabb first.
Go, Andrew.
No. It's kind of like the Edelman one where I understand the case. I really, really do. He was the face of the Eagles for a very long time. He had Philadelphia made like 3 consecutive NFC championship games in a row, all that stuff. his peak was too short for me. He kind of had some issues with injuries a couple years after the Super Bowl year. He just, I don't know. He really peaked really early in his career and then kind of very much tapered off. And when I'm looking at a player's like Pro Football Reference, and I have to be like, oh yeah, he did play for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, you know, Joe Montana played for the Chiefs. You know, all these all-time great. You know, Tom Brady played for the Buccaneers, right? Because we're living in it, obviously. But I don't know, when you have a career that ends where I go, I don't remember him playing for that team. It's not great. I don't know. His peak wasn't long enough, so I'm going to say no on Donovan McNabb. And I think if he wins that Super Bowl against the Patriots that year, I'm probably saying yes, because as I said, I think you should celebrate the greats, and McNabb having a Super Bowl would throw him up there. But he doesn't have those rings, which is why I have Eli in over him, as Eli has the rings. McNabb doesn't. McNabb didn't really have a very long peak of his career. So I'm going to say no.
Here's my counterpoint to this. And I'm going to agree with you and say no.
Yeah.
I will say no. Because, one, he was never the best quarterback of his generation, never made an All-Pro, or anything like that, never won a Super Bowl. But I do want to point out something that is lost in this discussion, is who was his cast of characters. So a lot of what Donovan McNabb did was, Andy Reid is clearly a Hall of Fame coach,
yes.
Right? We understand that he can make it out of anybody. Okay. Here's his receivers. You ready?
I'm not ready for Freddie Mitchell slander.
Tom Pinkston, Freddie Mitchell, Reggie Brown, slander. James Thrash, and Greg Lewis. Okay. At the same time, I just don't think that he makes it in, just based off of, again, there were so many other quarterbacks in his era that did so much more. And again, he made, 4 straight NFC championships and won one of them? And look, the 1 year that he was with a great receiver. Do you guys remember who that great receiver was?
Terrell Owens.
Jim Plunkett.
Yeah, Jim Plunkett, right. Terrell Owens. They didn't win the Super Bowl. And anybody that watched that Super Bowl would tell you that any reason that the Eagles had a chance in that game was because of Terrell Owens playing on a broken leg, which, again, Terrell Owens is a Hall of Famer, should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't want to get upset. But if Brett Favre went out there on a broken leg and played, there would be a statue in front of Lambeau Field, even if they lost the game, just based on him just going out there and doing that. But because it's Terrell Owens, you guys don't remember that. Whatever. That's my tangent on that. I just don't think that Donovan McNabb is in, especially when you consider a lot of the guys that are in his year group that have much better stats and have done much more than Donovan McNabb. Very good player, obviously limited by his receivers, because that's what I wanted to point out in the beginning. But I feel like his case just doesn't stack up.
Yeah, I hate this term, but he's definitely in the Hall of Very Good.
Hall of Very Good is absolutely the best way to put it.
Also, Jim Plunkett is a quarterback, so
he is.
I apologize for that. I don't know. That's just the first name that popped in my head.
It's fine. You probably catch the
Donovan McNabb just doesn't have the Super Bowl for me. He has 230 touchdowns in his career, 6-time Pro Bowl. So he's not a bad player. He's a pretty good, darn good player. But he just doesn't have that ring. And I agree with Andrew. If he won that Super Bowl against the Patriots, I would put him in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't have that ring. He lost 3 times the NFC Championship game. Like, let's look at another guy who doesn't have a ring. Dan Marino doesn't have a ring, but his stats are impressive. His stats are impressive. 480 touchdowns, like 9-time Pro Bowl, 1984 MVP. So he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. While Donovan McNabb has 230 touchdowns and who lost 3 NFC Championship games. If he had that ring, he would deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I just say he doesn't have that ring, which makes me not make him to be in the Hall of Fame. Like Dan Marino has 480 touchdowns. He doesn't have a ring. It's just that his stats were way, way, way better than Donovan McNabb's.
When it comes to rings, that shouldn't be the end-all, be-all. Because there's plenty of people that have a bunch of rings. Like I said, Trent Dilfer's won a ring. Brad Johnson's won a ring. Do Trent Dilfer and Brad Johnson have a better case than Donovan McNabb?
No.
Absolutely not. That's not the end-all, be-all. It should just be one part of how you contextualize his Hall of Fame case.
I'm not basing it off the ring. I'm just saying it's just that his
No, you're right.
His stats also are better than guys like Dan Marino who made it without a ring.
Yeah.
No, you're good. I mean, honestly, if you're going to make it without a ring, then you need to be a transcendent talent who we can contextualize and say, hey, this guy ran into this team, or this guy wasn't surrounded by anybody, but Donovan McNabb doesn't have that. So I agree with you 100% of me.
Yep. So moving on to the next player is Roger Craig, Niner running back.
He literally created the mold for current day NFL running backs, and he's not a Hall of Famer. Like, every running back in the NFL today does what Roger Craig did in the 1980s, and he did it first. Yes, he is. He is. Very much so. It's not even close. That's my argument.
Can I double down with yes, and absolutely what he said? Think about what you do when you talk about revolutionizing the game. Okay, Bill Walsh brings in the West Coast offense, and he shows you that running backs can actually catch passes. And Roger Craig creates so many mismatches for linebackers, anybody. And this is part of the reason that the NFL game is where it's at. Marshall Faulk's not real without Roger Craig. Mm-hmm. LaDainian Tomlinson isn't real without Christian McCaffrey. Isn't real.
Fired up. Let's
go. This is it. You had to get the Roger Craig one out of me. This is the one I've been holding back on. The fact that Roger Craig is not in the Hall of Fame makes your Hall of Fame almost borderline irrelevant. Really, seriously, when you start to think about impact. So you want to talk about rings? Okay, Roger Craig's got that. When you want to talk about how you've changed the game, Roger Craig has done that. And he's been that guy. I just don't understand how this is even a discussion at this point. And however this process goes, because I can't think of it right now because I'm just yelling and upset. You have to look at your process now at this point. When you start to think about, okay, Marshall Faulk's in.
Terrell Davis is in.
Terrell Davis is in on what? On the fact that Mike Shanahan made him prosper? Honestly, seriously, he only played for one team. Roger Craig did so much for the game and how running backs are viewed. There is no Christian McCaffrey right now. There is none of these guys that you see catching passes out of the backfield, having them run routes down the field without Roger Craig. The idea that a trendsetter, the person that has actually showed you the blueprint to how to do it, is not in, is in complete and utter disgrace to the Hall of Fame.
Wasn't he the first ever running back to have 1,000 yard season 2?
Just don't get me more mad.
You got fired up, Jay. This is the best version of Jason you got.
That's the worst one I've ever seen in my life. That's the worst one I've ever seen in my life.
I like Jason. I like angry.
Jason. I don't get it out of him too often, but when he gets going, it's hard to stop. It's the jersey in him. That's what I think it is. I think that's the first time I've ever referenced him as a Jersey person.
A Jersey guy, right?
So, but yeah, Roger Craig would it's hard with the athleticism aspect of it, but the style of what he was, like he's one of the few players from the 80s that you can kind of plug in today, and he could still be successful. Obviously, you have to get him to what the athletic standards are in the 2020s we're at now, because linebackers move significantly, they move significantly faster than what they used to be and all that. But if Terrell Davis is in, who played 7 years in the NFL, has less receiving yards and rushing yards and less rings, Roger Craig needs to be in. If Larry Csonka is in, guys like that, it's just Roger Craig needs to be in. It's not even a conversation at this point. It's just it's ignorance and laziness from the Hall of Fame in my mind.
The only reason I don't see why the only reason I can think why he's on the Hall of Fame yet is because he only had 8,000 yards. But if Terrell Davis is in the Hall of Fame, yeah, Roger Craig should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about it. Roger Craig has more yards passing and rushing. If Terrell Davis is in the Hall of Fame, why isn't Roger Craig in the Hall of Fame? I agree with you, Jason. That's just ignorant. And the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame, he has 73 touchdowns and 8,000 rushing yards. If he's not in the Hall of Fame and Terrell Owens has less than that, why is Terrell Davis in the Hall of Fame and Roger Craig isn't? That just makes no sense to me.
Also, but when he leads the blueprint of the current in 2021 NFL running back, how can you literally leave the guy who blazed the trail for these guys to do these things, including, look, all right, whatever, let's get biased. The 49ers changed the way football is played with the West Coast offense. Changed it. Absolutely. So now when you talk about the guy who did it first, did it better than guys who are doing it now in a different league with different rules and the way that they're used, come on, man. What are we talking about here at this point?
And also, too, like, you look at those teams and, like, Ronnie Lott's a Hall of Famer and Joe Montana's a Hall of Famer and Jerry Rice is and Bill Walsh and all these guys that made the Niners great. And you have, like, the centerpiece of the offense. Like this offense was built behind a like not built behind, but, like, a big part of it is that receiving running back. And he helps make the offense go. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, to me, he needs to be. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame, and that's just what it is.
So we talked about one Niners running back, former Niners running back. So let's move on to another former Niners running back who's, like, super old right now, who's, like, the Tom Brady of running backs, meaning old-wise, Frank Gore.
Yes. I look, yes, and just pass it to Andrew. Yes.
I was your age when Frank Gore started his career. Like, let's put it in that context. Like, that's just what it is. The top 16 rushing leaders, save the two active players, because Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson are in the top 16. Emmitt Smith, Hall of Fame.
Adrian Peterson is active, by the way, too. He's just not signed.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson is active.
He didn't retire.
But the top 16 of career rushing yard leaders: Emmitt Smith, Hall of Fame; Walter Payton, Hall of Fame; Barry Sanders, Hall of Fame; Curtis Martin, Hall of Fame; Tomlinson, Bettis, Dickerson, Dorsett, Brown, Falk, Edgerrin James. I already yelled about that. Marcus Allen, Franco Harris, Thurman Thomas, Hall of Famers. All of them. Frank Gore is number 3. If he can sign with a team and get 727 yards, he passes Walter Payton, who a lot of people think is the greatest running back in NFL history. In career rushing yards. And yes, I know Gore has the father time aspect of it. Yeah, Gore's played longer than all these guys, but that also is part of his Hall of Fame case, because we live in a world where running backs like LaDainian Tomlinson, right? LaDainian Tomlinson hit a certain point and the wheels didn't work like they used to. And that's just what it is. Frank Gore was never that breakaway speed guy, because, like, you could probably, those highlights like people have been posting of, like, here's all of Randy Moss's 50-yard touchdown receptions, and it's a 15-minute video. It's amazing. Like, I feel like you can make one of those clips of, like, here's Frank Gore's 40-yard rushes where he got caught from behind. He never really had that blow away speed aspect to him, but what he was the model of consistency, right? He had 1,000-yard rushing in, oh man, I got to count real quick, a lot of his years where he was a consistent starter. I'm just not going to count out loud right now. He's barely had seasons under 4 yards per carry. Like, I don't know. He's what you want to see. And when the Niners sign him on a one-day contract to retire, it's a day that should be celebrated. And I know football doesn't do the, like, go in as a team, but, like, he would be one of those, like, he goes in as a Niner, obviously. And, like, he's one of those guys that I'm just really set. Like, I want him to sign with Tampa Bay for this year, just so he can get a ring. That'd be cool. He definitely deserves a ring. But
did you just like predict the Tampa Bay Bucks winning a championship?
No, I just picked.
Bro, I thought you were a Niners. I thought
they're defending champions. I'm sorry, I picked defending champions. My bad. Sorry. He should sign with the Buffalo Bills again. There's my real suit. No, I'm joking.
He did.
He should sign with them again when they win the Super Bowl. That's how you get a ring, Jason. I know he was with the Bills a couple years ago, but they didn't win the Super Bowl.
Discussion for another day. They ain't beating the Chiefs. Not gonna happen.
No.
But that's
Josh Allen. Give me Josh Allen. No, but yeah, I think one of the things, like obviously, like, Joe Staley, another reason, but, like, Gore and Staley are the biggest reasons as to why those Harbaugh years hurt the most. Is they got by far the closest they've ever gotten to Super Bowl titles, and Joe Staley and Frank Gore definitely deserve rings, and I hope Gore, lands on a team that has a chance to win a Super Bowl this year and get that thought of, okay, he can get his ring. It might not mean what it was when he was a premier running back, but he's going to be he's a top 3 rusher of all time, maybe top 2 if he survives another year or two. But for me, yeah, he is. He's a Hall of Famer. It's not even close.
Real quick, I'm going to be really fast because it's clearly yes. 2 things. Frank Gore joined this league off of a devastating knee injury. Devastating. No one ever thought that this man would, let alone be able to play football for a year, let alone play how long he played. Okay. 2, I hate that his longevity is held against him, as if somehow you playing for a bunch of years is somehow a detriment or somewhat a negative perspective. Listen, we understand that this game, the NFL stands for not for long. That's what it stands for. Or no fun league, depending on who you ask. Frank Gore is ready to play for a team that's ready to sign him right now and ready to give you 4 yards per game. One more point before I go. Frank Gore, when he joined this league, played on one of the some of the worst 49er teams ever. Ever. And was the center of everyone's focus on defense. Literally, if you played the fucking you played the San Francisco 49ers, I'm sorry.
Jason.
I'm sorry. If you played the San Francisco 49ers back then, you knew exactly who you were going for. You know exactly who you were going to be focused in on, and he still found a way to be effective and be great for many years. Didn't matter what team he was on. He was on the Jets last year, was probably their best running back last year. Apologize for the cursing. I'm going to settle down a little bit. But Frank Gore, I don't see how this is in any way a discussion against his Hall of Fame case.
Also, the Dirty Birdie hit in the NFC Championship game in Atlanta is one of the coldest things I've ever seen on a football field in my life.
Goated. Absolutely goated.
I don't understand why people use that against him. He's played for that long. Like, look at, like, if I remember correctly, Ahmad Green went to, like, the Texans, right? From the Green Bay Packers to the Texans, if I remember correctly. I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure that's Ahmad Green. And he was, like, 30 years old, and he did nothing again with the Texans. Frank Gore can give you 4 yards per carry at 40 years old. I don't get why people use this age against him. Running backs get burned out at 30 years old, and he gives you 4 yards per carry at 40 years old. He's done it since 2005 to 2020. 16,000 rushing yards, 81 touchdowns. How is the man not in the Hall of Fame? I get that he's played for a long time, but the man at 40-year-old is still giving you 4 yards per carry. That should give you the Hall of Fame. It just should. Running back gets burned out at 30 years old, and the man can play at 40 and put up 4 yards per carry. He should 100% be in the Hall of Fame.
Can we just talk about how Amin the Dream just casually dropped? Yeah, Ahmad Green went from the Packers to the Texans. I didn't even know that. And that happened in 2007. I forgot that. And Amin just like, yeah, I casually am dropping that. It's like when Vish, you could just pick a year and he can give you the top 10 of that draft class. Like it's just casually dropping knowledge that I just can't do.
I mean, I'm sorry, man. Oh my God. I feel
got fired up
right now, bro. I feel awful right now, honestly, man. I should know better. I apologize.
It's all good. Moving on to another running back, because there's a lot of running backs that are not in the Hall of Fame. LaShawn McCoy.
Andrew, you start first, man. Let me just chill out real quick.
If Roger Craig isn't a Hall of Famer, LaShawn McCoy isn't. Like, that's my thing. It's like LaShawn McCoy has been a very good NFL player. Like, I'm going to give him all the credit. He's also to me just the Hall of very good. Like, he had a handful of very peak years with a few just kind of above average years, and he's good. He's very good, but I just don't think he's a Hall of Famer, especially if you don't. If you put Roger Craig in, yeah, then sure, we could put LaShawn McCoy in. We could have that conversation. Where I think it really separates him, though, is he was a lot better in the passing game than Roger Craig was. It's just the time frame is very different, right? Because he starts his career in 2009. He's still playing now. This is when using running backs as receivers is very popularized now, right? And he's a fringe guy to me, but I'm just going to lean no. And it's 100% out of the saltiness of Roger Craig's not a Hall of Famer, and Roger Craig was doing it way before LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, I got to say no. And I want to talk about his numbers. And this is going to make my case for him being no. So in 2020 is really when he burst on the scene. 207 rushes, 1,080 yards, 7 touchdowns. 2011 is really when he broke out. 273 rushes, 1,309 yards, 17 touchdowns in that year. That's really big. But 200 rushes the next year, only 2 touchdowns. 314 rushes, 1,607 yards, 9 touchdowns. So I think the point I'm trying to make is too many injuries, too little production in certain years. LaShawn McCoy, if you want to talk about Hall of Fame talent, definitely has that because cut on a dime is his nickname. And yes, he's still available to be picked up at this point. So he's still technically active. But honestly, if you start to look at, like you said, if Roger Craig's not in, then there's no way LaShawn McCoy gets in. If you're gonna keep if you're gonna keep Roger Craig out, then LaShawn McCoy has no shot at getting in. None.
And to me, he's as fringe can get. Let's say this: if he plays another year this year and the team gives him a chance to be a feature back, which I don't think they would, because he hasn't really been that for a few years. He hasn't had a 2017 was his last really good year, and since then he's just fallen off a cliff. Then maybe we can talk about it if he pulls out another 1,000-yard year, but I just don't see that happening. And as I said, I think it's very unfair to grade him on if Roger Craig isn't a Hall of Famer, then LaShawn McCoy shouldn't. But that's how I'm grading him because it's my personal Hall of Fame and I don't have a vote, so it's kind of irrelevant. But that's my opinion. Is he's not quite there. He's closer to the Hall of Fame than Donovan McNabb is. I'll say that.
Do we have Grant Cohn in our comments as well, saying that Roger Craig should be a Hall of Famer because he's absolutely right?
Yeah, he should be.
And yeah, I mean, hi Grant.
Way off topic. I almost printed out one of his Buster Posey as in a Hall of Famer tweets and brought it as a sign to the Giants game I went to, and I'm still not against doing that. Just throwing that out there, Grant.
Did Amin leave? Well,
I think he got a phone call.
Yeah, he did because his phone's jumping. Hey, Grant, nice to see you. I mean, he said, "Hey." No, you're good. I mean, yeah, go for it. So, LaShawn McCoy, is he in or is he out? You get like a bunch of phone calls. I mean, like my phone is like never ringing at all. I mean,
the only time I have a home phone in my house, so like I'll just get like random like spam calls or whatever. Like, and it's just annoying. So
the only time my phone goes off is when like Jeff Passan tweets. That's the only time my phone goes off. Yeah, I have the text notifications.
You have tweet notifications on for Jeff Passan? Unbelievable.
Yeah, dude, got to get those baseball. I have them for Schefter too.
Yeah, Schefter and Rappaport, you have to. Schefter and Rappaport,
right?
For sure, but
I mean, LaShawn McCoy though.
Tweeting out
yeah, I mean, you know what? Yeah. Go ahead.
No, like the thing is, Roger Craig. I don't know why he's on the Hall of Fame, but if LaShawn McCoy to me, yes, because he has 11,000 yards and 89 touchdowns. LaShawn McCoy should be a Hall of Famer. It's just that like Roger Craig, I don't know why he's on a Hall of Famer, but if Roger Craig makes the Hall of Fame, LaShawn McCoy should make the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
LaShawn McCoy has 11,000 rushing yards and 73 rushing touchdowns and 89 receiving touchdowns, 89 in all touchdowns in total. So he should make the Hall of Fame. So should Roger Craig. Roger Craig makes the Hall of Fame. So should LaShawn McCoy. If LaShawn McCoy makes the Hall of Fame, so should Roger Craig.
Yeah,
I mean, hey, that's really good. You know, I feel awful because I like cursed earlier, so like I'm just like out of it right now. But hey, you know, honestly, you're right though. Like I didn't know he had that many, and when you start to compare stats, then it starts to become more of a discussion in that direction. I just think that LaShawn McCoy was, when we talked about Donovan McNabb being in the Hall of Very Good, I think LaShawn McCoy is in the Hall of Very Good, and I think that if we really went down the line and started to look back in years on people like Edgerrin James is in the Hall of Famer. Would you argue that Edgerrin James shouldn't be in over LaShawn McCoy at this point?
I would put LaShawn McCoy in over Edgerrin James.
Okay.
Yeah.
Personally, but I was never super high. Like it's kind of like a Phillip Rivers thing. I was never super high on Edgerrin James, and I think a lot of that is just my dumb brain being like, well, those teams were Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison, and Edgerrin James was just kind of there. McCoy
no, wait, he made it. I'm sorry, he made it.
Edgerrin James, yeah. Grant makes the best point. He was elite for a couple seasons, but just the longevity isn't there. And that's my thing. It's like, yeah, he had some amazing years, but I just he's very fringe to me. That's all.
Jason, if you think Tiki Barber should make the Hall of Fame and he has 10,
then LaShawn McCoy should be in. Yeah, no.
And then LaShawn McCoy should make the Hall of Fame. LaShawn McCoy has more rushing yards and more touchdowns. You like
Go ahead.
Tiki Barber
Talk about it.
100% should make the Hall of Fame. Well, LaShawn McCoy has more rushing yards and more touchdowns.
Well, see, that's where the biases come in because you get
2009 to 2020, 10 years, just 11 years, one more year than Tiki Barber.
I see, and I think that's where this conversation is fun though, because that's where the biases come in. Jason, who is a Niner fan who lives in Jersey, who gets to hear about how good the Giants are year in and year out, no matter how much Giants fans lie to him about that, because they're never good. He hears Tiki Barber, so to him, he holds Tiki Barber a little higher. He has no home tie to LaShawn McCoy, just like me. Like, I'm salty that Roger Craig isn't a Hall of Famer, and I unfairly hold that against LaShawn McCoy because I don't have that LaShawn McCoy tie. As a 49er fan, I think Frank Gore is a slam dunk Hall of Famer, but if you ask that random Tennessee Titan fan, no, because he doesn't know what Frank Gore was, the Niner fans, and so we hold him a little higher than other people. So I think that's what makes these conversations fun is we all kind of have our own little different stories with different players. And Jason gets that's New York Giants smoke, blown in,
If I could play devil's advocate and tell you why I believe Tiki Barber over LaShawn McCoy, Tiki Barber for a long time was the New York Giants offense. 100%. Like nothing but Tiki Barber. And LaShawn McCoy went from Philly to Buffalo. And when he went to Buffalo, he went through the roof because Greg Roman, as we all know, knows how to scheme up a running game. And he went crazy over there. But I think that Tiki Barber kind of flies under the radar in terms of because he was on the Giants teams that weren't that good. Those Giants teams, they made the playoffs against the 49ers, and the 49ers did what to them? Came back and won an epic comeback game with Jeff Garcia and Terrell Owens. So I think that's sort of how he gets remembered. But I think that what gets lost on people is that Tiki Barber was the New York Giants offense, like 100%. Kerry Collins was their quarterback. Amani Toomer is no slouch. He was a good receiver, but everything ran through Tiki. And that's the part that I think is a little bit lost when we come to this. But look, you bring up a good point. I mean, if LaShawn McCoy has better stats or stats that are comparable, and I'm telling you off the bat that I think that Tiki Barber should join, then LaShawn McCoy should join.
Can I make a counter argument to the Tiki Barber LaShawn McCoy thing? Even though I say no to both, LaShawn McCoy is remembered like he is because of fantasy football.
Yes.
Year in and year out, he would be a top 3 guy because of his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. And we live in this world where, we value what fantasy football points say. The reason why people assume Eli Manning is a fringe Hall of Famer is because he was never the sexiest, fantasy football quarterback. He would never be in the top 5 with Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and the quarterbacks of those days, where LaShawn McCoy, we hear his name every year, not because, yes, he was he was a very good football player, but we heard his name year in and year out, because of fantasy football. I mean, we've been convinced that David Johnson is just this like generational running back because he got a lot of fantasy points when realistically, like he was the only option outside of Larry Fitzgerald for a very long time. So of course he would get a lot of yards because they would need a guy to carry the offense. And so I think we hold a lot, like my dumb brain is probably going to draft David Johnson in like the 14th round in next year's fantasy draft, just because, he was a top 5 running back 3 years ago.
Whoa. 14th round. All right, hey, look, man, if you're going to join that league, can I join that league? And I hope it's for some money because he's absolutely the starter this year, but keep going.
You can join. I play in not smart fantasy leagues because then that's how I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'm very bad at fantasy football.
I don't know if he makes it to the 14th round. I see him in dynasty startups going super late, but man, all right. I'm sorry, Amin.
So moving on to the last topic of the day, because we're almost over an hour. We already discussed about that Eli Manning isn't the best quarterback in his draft class. And we could all argue that Big Ben should be in the Hall of Fame. But let's move on to Phillip Rivers, because Phillip Rivers just retired. And there's been a huge discussion of should Phillip Rivers be in the Hall of Fame? Should he not be in the Hall of Fame? So what's your guys' take on that? Should Phillip Rivers be in the Hall of Fame or not?
First of all, welcome to the sprint ride option world where we just kind of talk for a very long time, and all of a sudden we're at an hour. That's usually what happens with our shows too. We say, hey, we're going to go for 35 minutes, and then at minute 55, we're like, we probably should wrap this up. So this is what we do. Yes, I did power rank Mr. Manning over Phillip Rivers, but that doesn't hurt his Hall of Fame case in my mind. I think it's kind of the same thing as Frank Gore, right? Where like people want to use his longevity and lack of success in the postseason against him. And while in my mind, he is the third best quarterback in that class because he doesn't have the rings. Yeah, put him in. Why not? I think he is a Hall of very good player, but because he plays quarterback, that pushes him in. I really think a guy who was as consistently good. I mean, we're talking 3 years ago when he's 37. He's putting up one of the best seasons of his career, leading the Chargers to a 12-4 record. He goes to Indianapolis, and they make the playoffs. And I know he wasn't great. He wasn't what he was, but he's still good enough to get them to the playoffs and being a part of yes, he is a Hall of Famer. That's my opinion. I know he doesn't have the Super Bowls or even the playoff success, but I really think that when you have a guy like Phillip Rivers who played as long as he did and was as consistent as he was, I would put him in. Yes.
Means phone is blowing up again, but hey, yes, Phillip Rivers absolutely deserves to be in. He just retired last year, and this has always been my argument about this. Eli Manning retired 3 years ago, and you want to put him in, and I want to put him in because of his 2 rings. But yes, absolutely 100%. I believe Phillip Rivers had one of his best years last year statistically. And when you look at his playoff runs, okay, yes, his teams never made the Super Bowl, but his teams never didn't make the Super Bowl, and it wasn't because he was so terrible. It was because of other circumstances. The defense couldn't hold up. Like I said, he played on a torn ACL in Foxborough, which is one of the most heroic performances I've ever seen from any player in the history of this game. Even last year, they lose to the Bills. Phillip Rivers was incredible in that game. And again, it has to do with who's surrounding him, who was there. But the Chargers, look, if you want to say that the Chargers didn't live up to what? All right, so look, the Chargers let Drew Brees walk.
Yes.
For Phillip Rivers. Okay. Can you argue that the Chargers wouldn't have been better off with Drew Brees or Phillip Rivers? Like, I really don't feel like that's really much of an argument. I feel like even if Drew Brees was there, the Chargers probably weren't going to win a Super Bowl. Remember, Drew Brees won 1 Super Bowl with the Saints, and they were perennial playoff contenders, but they never really sniffed Super Bowls. That wasn't their bag. That's not really where they were. So for Phillip Rivers to retire this year, to have what he has on his resume, for him to be as tough, he never missed games, ever. I mean, Eli Manning didn't either, so I guess that, doesn't really help. But Phillip Rivers just played last year with the Colts, and was that good. They did as much as they did with him. And, yeah, I mean, honestly, Phillip Rivers deserves to be in. If you're asking my opinion, Phillip Rivers deserves to be in. If you're asking me to rank the 3, even with the 2 Super Bowls, I have Eli Manning 3rd, behind Phillip Rivers at 2, and I have Ben Roethlisberger 1st. And there's still an argument to be made, even still. I know we don't have enough time for it, for Phillip Rivers being the best quarterback out of this draft. But that's a story for another day.
We can compare him to
have the playoff success.
That's why. I mean, and again, look. So here's what's lost with the Big Ben thing. And this is what people forget. Big Ben wasn't the starter coming out. Tommy Maddox was the starter. Tommy Maddox hurts himself in week 2, and Ben Roethlisberger takes over, and they lose 1 game the entire season. And they lose in the playoffs. That's fine. That's not Ben Roethlisberger's fault. They win the Super Bowl next year. But does anybody remember who was the quarterback who actually threw the only touchdown pass for the Steelers in that game? Because it wasn't Ben Roethlisberger. It was Antoine Randall L. Okay. So Ben Roethlisberger gets a ring by being the, like you said, the starting quarterback. But Ben Roethlisberger only has 1 ring in my mind, and that's the Arizona ring, because he won that one. And that's still, I will contend, the best throw in Super Bowl history. I don't care about the David Tyree throw. We're talking about in the last few seconds, you have to throw that ball in a keyhole to Santonio Holmes. And at that time in the game, that's the best throw in Super Bowl history. I don't want to hear about David Tyree. So I'll give Ben Roethlisberger that. But you have to contextualize how his journey moved. He won a Super Bowl by being the quarterback who started for that team. Again, he didn't even throw a touchdown pass in that game. I think he threw for something like 87 yards, if that makes any sense. If that even is like physically like able to be thought about. So, yes, Phillip Rivers deserves to be in. Ben Roethlisberger's resume is helped by that first Super Bowl, even though he wasn't the main contributor.
Can I do a quick blind player test? Just real quick, just to give you some context on how good Phillip Rivers has been. Player A has started 240 games in his career, 63,440 yards, 421 touchdowns. Player B has also played 240 career games on the dot, started 240, so the exact same number. 61,361 yards, 420 touchdowns. Player A is Phillip Rivers. Numbers all better across the line. Player B is Dan Marino. Same amount of games started, more yards, more touchdowns, more pretty much everything. And I know it's a different era. We throw the ball more now. Phillip Rivers or Dan Marino had 8,300 pass attempts. Actually, Phillip Rivers did it in less. Dan Marino had 8,300 passing attempts in his career. Phillip Rivers had 81, so he had 200 less passing attempts. Dan Marino's a Hall of Famer. Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer. They both have no rings. Let's just play that game. Phillip Rivers had a better career than Dan Marino.
I was about to bring up the same point as Andrew.
Go for it.
I was just about to bring up the same point as Andrew.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
420 passing touchdowns, 63,000 passing yards, almost similar numbers to Dan Marino. If Dan Marino is in the Hall of Fame, both of them don't have playoff success. Both of them don't have Super Bowl rings, but they have the exact same numbers. Similar numbers, and if Dan Marino makes the Hall of Fame, you have to make that same case that Phillip Rivers should make the Hall of Fame. I get that he didn't have the playoff success. Dan Marino didn't have the playoff success either, but Dan Marino's in the Hall of Fame, and he has similar, or if not identical numbers as Phillip Rivers. And if Dan Marino's in the Hall of Fame, Phillip Rivers should 100% be in the Hall of Fame.
I'll make the final argument on this one, and it's just such an irrelevant argument, but I want to make it because I think it's funny, and Dolphins fans probably don't think it's funny. So, like, General Manager John Lynch, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but I think this is funny. Last game of career, Phillip Rivers only lost 27-24. Dan Marino's last game of his career was a 62-7 loss of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, Phillip Rivers is in.
And for anybody that is interested in understanding what that game was about, SB Nation does something called Rewind Theater or something like that.
Rewind.
Yes. Yep, I watched
I love that series.
I saw that.
Yep. So if anybody out there who has never watched that, watch the SB Nation breakdown of that 62-7 Mark Brunell led Jaguars over the Dan Marino led Dolphins, and you'll start to really realize who was who or what was what at the end of their careers. And I think that'll give you your answer as well, too.
Yeah, so I would take Phillip Rivers in, yes. I think that's just
He's
what
in.
It is.
Yeah, so that basically wraps up our show. Thanks for joining me, Jason and Andrew. Jason's channel is in the description. So is Andrew's Twitter. Go subscribe. Go follow them. And thanks you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.